and feel the waste of material thing awkward, inefficient, or ill-directed movement of men, however, leave nothing visible or tangible behind them. Their appreciation calls for an act of memory, an effort of the imagination, and for this reason, even though our daily loss from this source is greater than from our waste of material thing, the one has stirred us deeply while the other has moved us but little. A century on, what can we say about those words? On the one hand, they feel archaic. We of the 21st century are hyper aware of the importance of efficiency and the economic value of productivity gains. Our workplace are, at least when it comes to the building of material objects, incredibly well organized compared with those of Taylor's day. On the other hand, Taylor's work strike me as completely contemporary for all of our wanted efficiency in the making of things. Our economy is still incredible wasteful. This waste not comes not from the inefficient organization of work, but rather from working on the wrong things and on the industrial scales. As Peter Drucker said, that there is surely nothing quite so useless as doing with great efficiency what should not be done at all. And yet we are doing the wrong things efficiently all the time. It is hard to come by a solid estimate of just how wasteful modern work is, but there is no shortage of a- anecdotes in my consulting and travels taking talking about the lean startup. I hear the same message consistently from employees of companies big and small. In every industry we see endless stories of failed launches, ill conceived projects, and large batch that spiral. I consider this misuse of people's times a criminally negligent waste of human creativity and potential. What percentage of all this waste is preventable? I think a much large proportion than we currently realize. Most people I met believe that in their industry, at least, projects fail for good reason. Projects are inherently risky. Market conditions are unpredictable. Big company people are intrinsically uncreative. Some believe that if we just slowed everything down and use a more careful process, we could reduce the failure rate by doing fewer projects of higher quality. Other believe that certain people have an innate gift of knowing the right things to build. If we can find enough of these visionaries and virtuosos, our problems will be solved. These solutions were once considered state of the art in the 19th century too. Before people knew about modern management, the requirement of an ever faster world make these antique approaches unworkable, and so the blame for failed projects and business often is heaped on senior management, which is asked to do the impossible. Alternately, the finger of blame is pointed at financial investor or the public market for over-emphasizing quick fixes and short-term results. We have plenty of blame to go around, but far too little theory to guide the actions of leaders and investors alike. The lean startup movement stand in contrast to this hand wringing. We believe that most form of waste in innovations are preventable once their cause are understood. All that is required is that we change our collective mindset concerning how this work is to be done. It is insufficient to exhort workers to try harder. Our current problems are caused by trying too hard at the wrong things. By focusing on functional efficiency, we lose sight of the real goal of innovation, to learn that which is currently unknown. As Deming taught, what matters is not setting quantitative goals but fixing the method by which those goals are attained. The lean startup movement stands for the principle that the scientific method can be brought to bear to answer the most pressing innovation questions. How can we build a sustainable organization around a new set of products or services? Organizational superpowers. A participant at one of my workshops came up to me a few months afterward to relate the following story, which I am paraphrasing. Knowing lean startup principles make me feel like I have superpowers, even though I just a junior employee. When I met with cooperative VPs and GMs in my large company, I asked them simple questions and very quickly helped them see how their projects are based on fundamental hypotheses that are testable in minutes. I can lay out a plan they could follow to scientifically validate their plans before it's too late. They consistently respond with, "Whoa, you are brilliant. We never thought to apply that level of rigor to our thinking about new products before." As a result of these interactions, he has developed a reputation within his large company as a brilliant employee. This has been good for his career, but very frustrating for him personally. Why? Because although he is quite brilliant, his insight into Floyd product plans are due not to his spatial intelligence, but to having a theory that allow him to predict what will happen and propose alternatives. He is frustrated because the managers he is pitching his ideas to do not see the system. They wrongly conclude that the key to success is finding brilliant people like him to put on their teams. They are failing to see the opportunity he is really presenting them to achieve better results systematically by changing their belief about how innovation happens. Putting the system first, some dangers. Like tailors before us, our challenge is to persuade the managers of modern corporation to put the system first. However, Taylorism should act as a cautionary tale, and it is important to learn the lessons of history as we bring these new ideas to a more mainstream audience. Taylor is remembered for his focus on systematic practice rather than individual brilliance. Here is the full quote from the principle of scientific management that includes the famous line about putting the system first. In the future, it will be appreciated that our leaders must be trained right as well as born right, and that no great man can, with the old system of personal management, hope to compete with a number of ordinary men who have been properly organized so as efficiently to cooperate. In the past, the man has been first. In the future, the system must be first. There is no sense, however, implies that great men are not needed. On the contrary, the first object of any good system must be that of developing first-class men, and under systematic management, the best men arises to the top more certainly and more rapidly than ever before. Unfortunately, Taylor's insistence that scientifically management does not stand in opposition to finding and promoting the best individual was quickly forgetting in fact the productivity gains to be had through the early scientific management tactics such as time and motion study, takes task place bonus, and especially functional foremanship. The forerunners of today's functional departments were so significant that subsequent generation of managers lost sight of the importance of the people who were implementing them. This has led to two problems. Number one, business systems became more overly rigid and thereby failed to take advantage of the adaptability, creativity, and wisdom of individual workers. And there has been an overemphasis on planning, preventions, and procedure, which enable organization to achieve consistent result in a most static world. On the factory floor, these problems have been tackled hard on by the lean manufacturing movement, and those lessons have spread throughout many modern corporations. And yet in new product development, entrepreneurship, and innovation work in general, we are still using an outdated framework. My hope is that the lean startup movement will not fall into the same reductionist trap. We are just beginning to uncover the rules that govern entrepreneurship, a method that can improve the odds of startup success, and systematic approach to building new and innovative product that is no way diminishes the traditional entrepreneurial virtues, the primacy of vision, the willingness to take bold risks, and the courage required in the face of overwhelming odds. Our society needs the creativity and vision of the entrepreneurs more than ever. In fact, it is precisely because these are the such precious resources that we cannot afford to waste them. Product development pseudoscience. I believe that if Taylors were alive today, he would chuckle at what constitutes the management of entrepreneurs and innovators, although we harness the labor of scientists and engineers who would have dazzled any early 20th century person with their feats of technical wizardry. The management practices we use to organize them are generally devoid of scientific rigor. In fact, I would go so far as to call them pseudoscience. We routinely greenlight new projects more on the basis of the intuition than facts, as we've seen throughout this book. That is not the root cause of the problem. All innovation begins with visions. It's what happens next that is critical, as we've seen too many innovation teams engage in success creator selectively finding data that support their visions rather than exposing the element of the vision of the true experiments, or even worse, staying in the stealth mode to create a data-free zones of ultimate unlimited experimentation that is devoid of customer feedback or external accountability of any kind. Anything a team attempts to demonstrate cause and effect by placing highlight on a graph of gross matrix it is engaging in effect is true any time a team attempts to justify its failure by reporting the learning as an excuse. It is engaged in pseudoscience as well. If learning has taken place in one iteration cycle, let us demonstrate it by turning it into validated learning in the next cycle, only by building a model of customers behavior and then showing our ability to use our product or services to change it over time can we establish real facts about the validity of our vision. Throughout our celebration of the success of the lean startup movement, a note of caution is essential. We cannot afford to have our success breed a new pseudoscience around pivots, MVPs, and the like. This was the fate of scientific management, and in the end, I believe that setback is caused by decades science came to stand for the victory of routine work, our creative work mechanism over humanity and plans over agility. Latter movement had to be spawned to correct those deficiencies. Taylor's believe in many things that he dubbed scientific but that our modern eyes perceive as mere prejudice. He believed in the inherent superiority in both intelligence and characters of aristocratic men over the working classes and superiority of men over women. He also thought that lower status people should be supervised strictly by their better. These beliefs are part and parcel of Taylor's time. It is tempting to forgive him for having been blind to them. Yet, when our time is viewed through the lens of future practice, what prejudice will be revealed? In what forces do we place undue faith? What might we risk losing sight of with his initial success of our movement? It is with these questions that I wish to close. As gratifying as it is for me to see the lean startup movement gain fame and recognition, it is far more important that we be right in our prescription. That is known so far is just the tip of the iceberg. What is needed is a massive project to discover how to unlock the vast stores of potential that are hidden in plain sight in our modern workspace. If we stop wasting people's time, what would they do with with it, we have no real concept of what is possible. Starting in the late 1880s, Taylor begins a program of experimentation to discover the optimal way to cut steel. In the course of that research, which lasted more than 25 years, he and his colleagues performed more than 20,000 individual experiments. What is remarkable about this project is that it had no academic backing, no government research and development budget. Its entire cost was paid by industry out of the immediate profit generated from the higher productivity the experiments enabled. This was only one experimental program to uncover the hidden productivity in just one kind of work. Other scientific management disciples spent years investigating bricklaying, farming, and even shoveling. They were obsessed with learning the truth and were not satisfied with the folk wisdom of craftsperson or the parables of the expert. Can any of us imagine a modern knowledge work manager with the same level of interest in the method his or her employees use? How much of our current innovation work is guided by catchphrase that lack a scientific foundation? A new research program. What comparable research program could be could we be engaged in to discover how to work more effectively? For one thing, we have very little understanding of what stimulates productivity under condition of extreme uncertainty. Luckily, with cycle time failing everywhere, we have many opportunities to test new approaches. Thus, I propose that we create startup testing labs that could put all manners of product development methodologies to the test. How might those tasks be conducted? We could bring in a small cross-functional teams, perhaps the beginning with product and engineering, and have them work to solve problems. By using different development methodologies, we could begin with problems with clear right answers, perhaps drawn from the many international programming competitions that have developed database of well-defined problems with clear solutions. These competitions also provide a clear baseline of how long it should take for various problems to be solved so that we could establish clearly the individual problem solving proneness of the experimental subject. Using this kind of setup for calibration, we could begin to vary the condition of the experimentation experiment. The challenge will be to increase the level of uncertainty about what the right answer is while still being able to measure the quality of the outcome objectively. Perhaps we could use real world customer problems and then have real consumer test the output of the teamwork. Or perhaps we could go so far as to build minimum viable product for solving the same set of problems over and over again to quantify which produce the best customer conversion rates. We also could vary the all important cycle time by choosing more or less complex development platform and distribution channel to test the impact of those factors on the true productivity of the team. Most of all, we need to develop clear methods for holding teams accountable for validated learning. I have proposed one method in this book, innovation accounting, using a well-defined financial models and engine of growth. However, it is naive to assume that this is the best possible method as it is adopted in more and more companies. Undoubtedly, new techniques will be suggested, and we need to be able to evaluate the new ideas as rigorously as possible. All these questions raise the possibility of public-private partnership between research universities and the entrepreneurial communities they seek to foster. It also suggests the universities may be able to add value in more ways than by being simply financial investor or creator of startup incubator as in the current trend. My prediction is that wherever this research is conducted will become an epicenter of new entrepreneurial practice, and universities conducting this research therefore may be able to achieve a much higher level of commercialization of their basic research activities. The long-term stock exchange. Beyond simple research, I believe our goals should be to change the entire ecosystem of entrepreneurship. Too much of our startup industry has devolved into a feeder system for giant media companies and investment bank Part of the reason established companies struggle to invest consistently in innovation is intense pressure from public markets to hit short term profitability and growth targets. Mostly, this is the consequence of the accounting methods we have developed for evaluating managers, which focus on the kinds of gross vanity metrics discussed in Chapter 7. What is needed is a new kind of stock exchange designed to trade in the stocks of companies that are organized to sustain long term thinking. I propose that we create a long term stock exchange, LTSE. In addition to quarterly reports on profit and margins, companies on the LTSE would report using innovation accounting on their internal entrepreneurship efforts. Like Intuit, they would report on the revenue they were generating from products that did not exist a few years earlier. Executive compensation in LTSE companies would be tied to the companies' long-term performance. Trading on the LTSE would have much higher transaction costs and fees to minimize days trending and massive price swings. In exchange, LTSE companies would be allowed to structure their corporate governance to facilitate greater freedom of management to pursue long-term investment. In addition to support for long-term thinking, the transparency of LTSE will provide valuable data about how to nurture innovation in the real world. Something like the LTSE would accelerate the creation of the next generation of the great companies built from the ground up for continuous innovation. In conclusion, as a movement, the lean startup must avoid doctrines and rigid ideology. We must avoid the caricature caricature that science means formula and or lack of humanity in work. In fact, science is one of the humanity's most creative pursuit. I believe that applying it to entrepreneurship will unlock a vast storehouse of human potential. That would an organization look like if all its employees were armed with lean startup organization superpower? For one thing one thing everyone would insist that assumptions be stated explicitly and tested rigorously, not as a stealing tactics or a form of make work, but out of genuine desire to discover the truth that underlies every project vision. We would not waste time on endless arguments between the defender of quality and the cowboys of reckless advance. Instead, we would recognize that speed and quality are allies in the pursuit of the customer long-term benefit. We would race to test our vision, but not to abandon it. We would look to eliminate waste, not to build quality castle in the sky, but in the service of agility and breakthrough business result. We would respond to failures and setbacks with honesty and learning, not with recrimination and blame. More than that, we would shun the impulse to slow down, increase batch size, and indulge in the curse of prevention. Instead, we would achieve speed by bypassing the excess work that does not lead to learning. We would dedicate ourselves to the creation of new institutions with a long-term mission to build sustainable value and change the world for the better. Most of all, we would stop wasting people's time.